Liberal Democrats and Labour were pretty much level pegging. Nobody knew who to back. It's quite a diverse constituency. So some areas might go Labour, some areas might go Lib Dem, and the Tory was going to get in through the middle. It's been conservative. It had been conservative for 100 years. Of the 1,021 people who voted, 78% voted for Caroline Voden. So we had our champion. People had posters up saying, I'm Labour, but I'm voting Caroline Voden. I'm Green, but I'm voting Caroline Voden. And as a result, she won with a 7,000 majority, over 7,000 majority.
Anthea Simmons, thank you so much for joining us here in the library at Dartington Hall here at Byline Festival. We're really pleased to have you. Anthea, you're the co-founder of the South Devon primary. Just talk to us a little bit about how that came about and what it is and the success that you had last month.
Okay, I'll just start by saying that Simon Aldridge was the originator of the idea. And actually, Totnes has a precedent for a primary because an open primary selected Sarah Wollaston in 2010. So it wasn't a completely foreign concept. Simon approached me as the editor of West Country Voices because he knew I was campaigning hard against the Tories and calling them out. And he also roped in a chap called Ben Long from South Brent, who was heavily involved in Climate Action Network, etc. So the three of us were looking at what Neil Lawson calls a progressive tragedy, where the vote was split between in the polls, Liberal Democrats and Labour were pretty much level pegging. Nobody knew who to back. It's quite a diverse constituency. So some areas might go Labour, some areas might go Lib Dem, and the Tory was going to get in through the middle. It's been conservative. It had been conservative for 100 years, with the result that about 25% of the registered voters didn't bother to vote because they thought it was a fait accompli, and most people had given up all hope of ever having an MP of a different hue in any way, shape or form. So we thought the best thing to do was tactical voting wasn't going to be the answer because the polling was inconclusive, that the best thing was to pull together as a community and decide who we wanted to back to beat the Conservative. So we ran quite a long-term education programme of going out into towns and villages with a democracy meter where we polled people about how they felt about life and whether they'd like to see a change. And we started in July 2022, so we did it quite some time ago. And I think it's fair to say that the candidates, the Liberal Democrat was a little bit wary of doing it because she'd also started campaigning quite early and she could see that maybe she might not get picked and then what would she do? And the Greens were very supportive. The Labour Party declined to take part and didn't have a candidate at that time. In fact, didn't have a candidate until right up to the wire. And we ran 7 town halls in towns right across the constituency and in March, because I was convinced they would go before the summer. And over 1,000 people attended those sessions in the cold, in the evenings, in the driving rain. It was a horrible, horrible bit of weather. And they voted, they listened and asked lots of questions. And of the 1,021 people who voted, 78% voted for Caroline Voden. So we had our champion.
And then, perhaps it took you by surprise, perhaps it didn't, but, Caroline Voden was elected in the general election. How do you think that came about? Do you think the South Devon primary had a big role to play in that?
Yeah, I think everybody who attended those sessions, those town halls, came away saying, oh my God, this is going to be so different. I feel part of a community. I feel part, I didn't realise quite so many people were anti-Tory. I thought it was a Tory constituency. I feel empowered. I'm going to use my vote. I'm going to tell everybody else. So we ran a massive campaign to raise awareness of her candidacy. And we also weighed in behind her as support. So whereas she might have expected to have 20 or 25 stalwarts, leafleting and canvassing with her, she suddenly had access to 100 people who were up for doing it. And most of these people had never been involved in politics before, never been engaged, and suddenly they're out, not just leafleting, but canvassing, talking to people on the doorstep. And word spread. And we all, we wore branded stuff. This is the big fish. We are the bigger fish, pursuing the Tory one. And people got to hear about it. So you'd be walking down the street and somebody would say, I'm doing that, point at you and say, oh, I'm doing that.
Wow.
And that's what happened. You know, we just pulled the community together. George Monbiot got behind it, wrote about it in The Guardian. Various people got interested in us. The parties were not happy. They clearly don't like anything being taken away from central control. I think that's an issue we've got to talk about. Tribalism played a part, but most people parked their tribalism, and people had posters up saying, "I'm Labour, but I'm voting Caroline Vaden. I'm Green, but I'm voting Caroline Vaden." And as a result, she won with a 7,000 majority, over 7,000 majority.
That's an enormous swing, isn't
It's
it?
an enormous swing from a 12,000 majority for the Tory the last time. And we had a 68% turnout, which I think was pretty good for the night, you know. And I
Higher
think
than the rest of the country. Yeah.
higher than the rest of the country. And now we've got a whole body of people who are really invested in her, and she's really invested in them. So it's a win-win.